On the podcast today, we are going to speak about Chapter 81 of the Tao Te Ching, which makes up the 81st episode of the 81 Meditations on the Tao Te Ching. And as usual, Guy will read Jia Fu Feng and Jane English's translation, and I will read Derek Lin's translation.
Truthful words are not beautiful. Beautiful words are not truthful. Good people do not argue. Those who argue are not good. Those who know are not learned. The learned do not know. The wise never try to hold on to things. The more you do for others, the more you have. The more you give to others, the greater your abundance. The Tao of heaven is sharp, but does no harm. The Tao of the wise is to work without effort.
True words are not beautiful. Beautiful words are not true. Those who are good do not debate. Those who debate are not good. Those who know are not broad of knowledge. Those who are broad of knowledge do not know. Sages do not accumulate. The more they assist others, the more they possess. The more they give to others, the more they gain. The Tao of heaven benefits and does not harm. The Tao of sages assists and does not contend. So we have finally arrived at the last chapter of the 81 Meditations of the Tao Te Ching. And I feel like this is actually a good departure for the Tao Te Ching, this last chapter. I feel like when Lao Tzu wrote the 81 chapters down for the guard on the Eastern Gate, this was a good sort of conclusion before he jumped on his ox and he hightailed it into the wilderness. And so I feel like it's a beautiful way to end it. And it again hones in on the anti-PC perspective of Taoism, plus also honing in on the practice of Wu-Wei.
Yes, this chapter pretty much finalizing the entire Tao Te Ching, I think. So yes, it contains the most important essence of the Taoist lessons, I think. So yeah, as you mentioned about very amoral perspective of the world of Taoism, and also like the characters of the wise person who is following the heaven of the Tao, and also mentioning about knowing the Tao, what is a true knowing really means. Like not that we think of conventional way of learning is not quite the way in Taoism that they're talking about.
That's right. I love actually how this chapter starts off when it says, true words are not beautiful, beautiful words are not true, which again, like speaks to what you were saying, like flies in the face sort of convention, that we need to be politically correct and we need to make sure we watch our P's and Q's, so to speak, when we speak. But in this chapter, Lao Tzu is kind of saying that the sages are very blunt and honest when they speak. They're not sort of beating around the bush. It's not that they're speaking with malice, they're speaking with good intention. The problem is on the part of the listener if they are offended by it, right? Mm-hmm. So we live in a society that's, in the modern day, overly sensitive and has been warped due to political correctness, which is actually run by companies and corporations to muzzle you. And so the sage doesn't fall into that sort of trap. And so they're not intending to offend you. They're just saying what they would like to say from the truth. And if you are offended by that, then what can they do? The thing in this chapter is, like what Lao Tzu is pointing out, the dangers is that if you have a flowery language that's PC and you're trying to make everybody happy and you're appealing to someone else's vanity, so to speak, this can lead to some sort of deception, right? Mm-hmm. This can distort reality. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the danger that Lao Tzu is alluding to in this chapter. Mm.
Yes, the first two lines are actually a very important lesson that we need to all take from Taoism, which is that a block of wood analogy, right? A block of wood versus, like in Confucianism, would say chiseled and when carved block, right? Whereas Lao Tzu mentions a lot about the beauty of an uncarved block of wood. As it is, the nature itself is already beautiful because it never been warped in different ways so that it looks certain way, whereas a wood is just a wood and you leave it, the block of wood as it is and as it was, so that its own beauty just emanates from it from its own nature, right? So that's what he's really saying here. Like you said, it's not like you trying to harm someone by giving, like a bad words or anything. It's just like nutritious food often doesn't taste the best.
That's
right.
That's right. Yeah.
So the same thing. So the beauty of things that as they are is what he's trying to say. And when we talk about how things are going this day and age, when people very worry about how they speak about things, but they censor themselves, right? But I think once you find yourself that you're censoring yourself, and that's, I think, a sign of a bit of a problem, I think. You shouldn't worry about what other people think and what the status quo is. You just need to be able to speak your mind, right?
That's
Whether
right.
that's, of course, you don't intend harm to someone, right? Harm someone. You don't want to do that. But if there's something to be said, whether you like it or dislike it, well, it has to be said, right? And you need to be also, the listeners have to be able to take it too. That is also testing the characters of the listeners, right? Can you take the truthful words? Sometimes not the beautiful thing, but sometimes, as we know, these not beautiful words, but it has a lot of truth in it, teach you much more, right? And yeah, as you mentioned, it's often the beautiful words are not truthful. Often that is a bit more, you can feel it, right? Like when someone's just trying to say nice things, but they don't really mean that. you know? And also, Lao Tzu in this line also mentions that some people who have with the like a very well spoken and can just narrate about some sort of speech and with the like a nice words and with the charismatic energy and things like that, with such conviction and with the solid conclusion and things like that. But Lao Tzu always tells us to avoid the solid conclusion over anything, right? Because solid conclusion is almost like a big sign of ignorance. Because in nature, nothing is solid. Things are always changing. And from nature being so, we need to learn from that kind of attitude somewhat. Like you need to be open and you be aware to have the solid conclusion over anything.
Exactly. And saying what people want to hear is often the worst thing for them, right? Because that's what Lao Tzu is talking about with beautiful words, right? We're saying what we think people want to hear. And that can do more harm in the long run because you're not really telling them the truth. And we all experience this to a certain degree, right? We may have that friend who is very self-involved, who do things for themselves, who are very selfish, and they don't even know what they're doing. Or let's be honest, maybe they do know what they're doing and they just don't care about what they're doing, right? We've all experienced that where we have a certain friend who will, maybe we're in a group setting and they will ignore the group and they'll go and do their own thing. And, it's very selfish and self-centered. And so because most people are good-hearted and innocent, most of us will just kind of tiptoe around that situation. But what that person actually needs is the sage's advice, right? They need someone to directly say to them, hey, look, you're being an a-hole. Stop behaving like this. And though that it will offend them, maybe they can kind of recalibrate and actually see themselves objectively. Sometimes you've got to be the one to kind of put yourself out there. And look, if that person is true to their negative character, then they'll probably hate you forever. But if they are willing to grow and change, then they will actually appreciate you for being the one to say, hey, look, this is, pull your bootstraps up a little bit, stop behaving that way. And so I think Lao Tzu saw in the Warring States period, because Confucianism was such a politically correct ideology, everyone was saying all of these flowery words and they weren't trying to step on anyone's toes and nothing was actually really getting done. And so people were just pretending to be a certain way, trying not to offend anyone. And as you said, they were constantly self-censoring themselves. And so that, again, is a negative character trait because why would you self-censor yourself anyway when you think about it? Who are you trying to appeal to? What sort of system are you trying to live up to, right? These are the things we need to ask ourselves on a spiritual level. This is what Lao Tzu was asking. why am I saying all these beautiful words to keep up with the status quo when I can easily just eliminate them? I can speak the truth. If I don't have any friends in the end, it doesn't matter. I always spoke the truth. I was true to myself, and I wasn't living through some sort of false persona.
Yes. I think the biggest reason why people are doing that is because there's a deep-seated fear in there, in one's within themselves, I think. Because the fear of being perceived in a certain way, and what if I say against the status quo, and how they're gonna think of me, and this and that. And we see this a lot on social media, and as well as offline as well, of course. But again, the Lao Tzu always been telling us to have a bit of a backbone, right? Mm. So that you don't have to watch what you say. You don't have to try to fit into society and somewhat. Mm. So you need to be yourself and try to be comfortable with the way you think and how you are. And you don't have to censor yourself. If you do censor yourself, that's a very, I think it's very bad sign. It's pretty severe situation.
That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a negative to censor yourself back then and now. And so, like I said, it's not that Lao Tzu and the sages are speaking with any malice. You don't want to take that and use that as a justification to be an a-hole, right? Oh, look, the first 2 lines of the 81st chapter said this, so I can just speak like this. There's a certain natural skill to it. So you don't want to go around just telling people off and telling what you think according to your own ego perspective. You just want to be a straight shooter in the sense that you're speaking from a natural place and you're not muzzled by whatever the overarching ideology of the society is, right? And so that's where we all get it wrong, because we're speaking with this kind of cloud over us because we want to stay within that cloud so we don't step out of line with it, because we may be cancelled by our friends, cancelled by society, or what have you. Mm. So you want to speak with good intentions, yes. And the sages are always speaking with good intentions, but the reason why people take it the wrong way is because maybe they've been indoctrinated with a divisive ideology, for example, or they've been indoctrinated with a certain religious perspective, and they can't see the way of nature as it truly is. Mm. And so they judge everything according to their own sort of subjectivity, what in Sanskrit we'll call drishti, right? Our own subjective perspective. And then when you do judge reality from that perspective, your subjective perspective, then you're going to find things always wrong with the world.
That's right.
But the funny thing is that subjective perspective is built on this overarching ideology that you're trying to keep up with. And so Lao Tzu just circumvents all of that, and he just speaks from the place of wu wei, this effortless action that he has embodied. And so that even is in his speech. So he'll just say what is effortlessly needed or what is immediately inappropriate in that situation. And that may not appeal to everybody, what he's going to say, but it is exactly what everyone needs to hear.
That's right. I think later in this chapter, he talks about like trust and compassion. And when you hear someone speaking the truth, often might not be very comfortable, but we would feel more comfortable trusting the honest people who can speak their mind, right? And also who speak their mind also could be coming from very compassionate place too, like trying to really help somebody who needs to hear the truth. But the truth often inconvenient to us, right? That we don't want to sometimes hear that. But yeah, that also come from the trusting and having the compassion as well, that the person who's speaking is also trusting that person will take it in a right way. And also we can trust those people who can speak their mind because they are not really lying or they're not censoring themselves.
That's right. That's the right? That's the virtue, that sort of virtue that a sage has. They've let go of the banks of the river, they've stopped fighting the current, and their power has become the river's power. And so you can trust their words, actually. Though it may not appeal to your moral sensibilities in the modern day, you can trust their words. We're still reading this text 2,500 years ago, and it still appeals to us now. Though it may not appeal to our moral sensibilities, but it touches something deep within us, and that's why we continually read it and study it and speak about it. because it touches us on a deep level, as opposed to a temporary text about science, for example, that's going to be upgraded in probably 5 years. There'll be another theory that'll go on top of that, and then on and on and on you go. Where the Tao Te Ching and even the Chuang-Tzu, right, if we're talking about Taoist texts, they're going to live on into eternity, because they're eternal texts that appeal to us no matter which time or age that human civilization has existed.
I think Taoism is, in a way, that it can be read in different levels, depends on where you're at in your journey, right? It's not like that you're going like a linear fashion of levels. It's not like that, but it's more like when you're reading the same text like 10 years ago, and now it's be different, and 10 years from now it'll be different. So it's available to everyone, but at the same time, actually that's why the Taoism is very human. It's an extremely human, and in a way that just like how we talk about the Zhuangzi's philosophy, it's a philosophy for the spiritual elites. Not elite as in someone who are better than everyone, anything like that. But the Taoist philosophy is extremely human. That's why we are still studying after 2,500 years. And it will still be read 2,500 years from now, I believe. Because as far as the human species is alive, right? We will be the same human as now to 2,500 years from now, right?
Yep.
So we will have the same emotions, same feelings, and same way of thinking, and we will resonate, and something will touch us from the same reason too, I think. That's why it is extremely human, and that's why we can read it over and over again throughout our lives, and it touches in a completely different way. It gets deeper and deeper, and you yourself will have your own life experience to reflect on, right? So it can help you to go through certain situations and vice versa. Your life experience can maybe reflect on the text in a different way, in more like a metaphysical or in principle, right? So that's why it's obviously timeless philosophy. That's why we are still studying. And again, there's a lot more to know as we live on.
Yeah, that's why this last chapter actually recaps the whole text really well, isn't it? Because it does come back to Wu-Wei in the sense of non-interference, like that, reinforcing that mentality that we need to have before we ourselves jump on the ox and go out into the wilderness of life, before Lao Tzu went out into the wilderness, right? And so in this chapter it talks about how, those who don't know debate, and those who do know don't debate, right? And so obviously that's paradoxical if you look at things from a linear perspective, but the fact of the matter here is that when you understand the truth, and when you've come to rest in your own being, that there's no need actually to go out there and interfere with people's lives. No matter what is going on around out here, right? No matter what is happening. The funny thing in the modern day is people always think that all of these events are recent. Oh, look, there's a war over there. Look, I don't like that guy over there. It's always happened. It's like, it's not new. Just because you have your stupid phone and your stupid social media apps doesn't mean it's new. The only difference is you've got a stupid social media app and a stupid phone to vent your own opinions on it. It's not natural to know what the guy down the street that you've never spoke to in your life, that you know what they're doing in their life. That's very unnatural. But you can go on their Facebook and you can stalk them from the shadows, and you can see who they are, who they voted for, and so forth and so on. This leads to a very weak and aggressive and divided society. That's such a new phenomenon, and everyone always champions social media and how great it is, and and it's so ridiculous. Yeah, it's done some good things, but it's not like a net positive. It's almost like 80% negative, to be honest, because it flies in the face of how we are naturally. So it's like I said, it's not natural. The guy that you've never spoke to down the end of the street, you've never even spoke to once, you barely even know his name, but you find out his name, you look at his social media account, and then you can know everything about him from the shadows. first of all, that's creepy. Right? And second of all, it's not natural. And so Lao Tzu's advice here is to not engage in those sorts of activities. And he uses debate here, right? Like he uses the point of like non-interference, of not being engaged in whatever the noise is, right? And so people think that the world's noisier now than it was 50 years ago. And it's not in the real world. It's only because we've got this new online world where everyone, throws all their opinions and everything and this and that people think it's different in a lot of sense. And yes, people are being radicalized because of that. There is no doubt about it. There are a lot of radicalized people in the world in this day and age because of social media, and they don't have the foresight to sit back and think, wait up, maybe I've been radicalized by this thing that I'm carrying around with me. I'm not naturally not like that. But once when they go to a barbecue, right, and they're sitting with people that they never saw before, or maybe they feel like they disagree with, you naturally come to realize that, hey, man, we're all pretty much the same. Why am I so triggered about what I see online? It's so childish, right? It's so childish. So the point is not to get engaged in a lot of these debates. And I think the phone is kind of like a good metaphor for, like, when you overcome the world, you're at peace. It's a very practical and literal translation, because when you think about it, so there's this world, right? So as soon as you throw that in the bin, moksha. Moksha, because you don't know anything. You're not in Facebook comments anymore. You're not, on Instagram arguing with everybody, or in the YouTube comments arguing, throwing your hot gas around it as if you matter. You don't matter. Most of the YouTube comments that you make will never ever be read. It's just in a cosmic soup. You go onto some videos and they have like 500,000 comments. The chances that someone's going to read your comment is slim. It's slim. So you need to have a real sort of practical view of what you're doing in your life. So Lao Tzu, obviously with this, he's also talking on the metaphysical, but he's also talking practical. Why engage in these debates? What does it do for you, actually? Does it develop friendships? Does it develop connection and close ties with people? Or does it push people away from you further? Maybe work on the subjective perspective before jumping in the comment section, so to speak.
Yes, speaking of becoming noisier, it's not in a sense that we speak a lot more, or we meet and socialize with people, and we do a lot of talking. It's more so noisy within our mind, right? The activity, I wouldn't even say it's an activity, but basically just staring at the phone, is that, like, what are you interacting with, really? You are just kind of swimming in your own soup of thoughts, full of images and words and this and that, and you just you create much more noise in your mind, in your head, right? That's where things get noisier, like, so that you lose concentration, and you lose even the somewhat like ability to mingle with people, right? Because you have too much noise in your head, which prevent people to observe other people, friends or family, whoever it might be, more objectively, right? You start judging people, and you ruminate in your own thoughts, and that disturbs your relationship with the world, really, right? So staying silent is actually the most important practice. Again, like Lao Tzu said, the learn do not know, right? Like, it can interpret many different ways, but more you know, you realize more you don't know. So how you naturally start speaking less about things.
And speaking less about things, especially in context of the Tao Te Ching, is very similar to the modern day, right? Because a lot of people speak about politics, society, economy, all of these socialized aspects, right? And so back then, a lot of the unlearning that Lao Tzu talked about, a lot of the negation of knowledge was about unlearning Confucianism. And obviously a lot of people in the modern day, and we see this in the comments and this all the time, those who speak about it don't know, just like used to. And it's like, that's actually not what they're saying. Did you read the Chinese, or you read some half-baked English translation? what Lao Tzu said, those who operate and know Confucianism or that moral sort of ideology and operate from there don't know. It's not that you stop reading books and then you stop learning this and that. I mean, if you're a carpenter, you obviously have to upgrade your game, and you have to know about new tools and new ways of building and this and that. This is actually beneficial for your craft, right? Like any craft. Same with philosophy. When you're studying philosophy, it's good to get a perspective from different viewpoints, which then nourishes your understanding, deepens your experience as you continually live the contemplative life. And so a lot of the problem is people take things on face value and they think, oh, well, does this mean I just stop learning altogether and I don't read books and this and that? It's like, no, that's not what Lao Tzu actually said. He said it's unlearning basically yourself that has been indoctrinated by the socialization process. And we've all gone through a socialization process, no matter who we are. We've all gone through that, either through education, the society we're brought up in, the culture we're brought up in. And Taoism is a technology for deprogramming you from socialization. And so that's something we need to think about when they're talking about this here too, right? Like we don't want to just think that, oh, so I don't read any books anymore and this and that. It's like, no, that's not what's being said.
I think the important thing is to remember that how much we expect and demand things from reading certain books. I think we have certain type of expectation somewhat, or even somewhat kind of a reward that if I read this book, I'm going to be very knowledgeable, or if I read that book, I'm going to be smarter than others and this and that. Or, okay, if I read the Tao Te Ching, and I'm going to be more spiritual than other people. This kind of a expectation and the demand over something ruins the relationship with the learning, actually, I think.
That's right.
Here the Lao Tzu is talking about the learn, do not know, meaning that knowledge doesn't become an object anymore. Knowledge become kind of part of your, almost like your consciousness, so that you are that. So when you become the knowledge itself, do you have to speak about it? Do you have to go and ask, I want to get something from this? Or, you know, like it's not that sort of relationship. But this day and age, people in general want something in return, let's say. And learning something or getting some sort of knowledge, even in the spiritual path, is the same as well. That a lot of people expect something from, let's say, for example, meditation. I practice every day to become more present, become more like this, become more like that, become a better person and this and that. Yes, that's kind of innocent, right? Innocent expectation, because you are doing some sort of work for yourself, which is great, right? But if you demand too much, or if you get disappointed by you don't feel you're getting any result, right? Then it's a problem, because you make things like an object that you need to go and grab it. Whereas the path of knowledge, especially spiritual knowledge and the Taoism, is to immerse into that knowledge, and the goal has to be that you become the knowledge, whatever that might mean, how that feels like. You don't know yet, because you probably haven't lived that knowledge long enough. Right? And again, once you feel like, I think now I feel like getting a bit easier with this knowledge, or your life gets easier and your mind is clear and you're much more at ease, then you're probably on the right direction, right? And then when you're in that sort of process, you don't go out and say that, oh, I know it now. It sounds ridiculous, right? So I think it's important that people somewhat need to give up that kind of expectation. You're doing things for the sake of it, really. You know,
That's right.
You don't expect anything in return, and that is a very difficult way of thinking while we are living in such a high achievement-based society. But when it comes to serious knowledge like this, it actually works completely the opposite.
That's right. It is that achievement-based society that gets in the way of people who are interested in spirituality truly understanding, right? It's like when Shunryu Suzuki first moved to America, and he was in that meditation group in San Francisco, and then everyone all the Americans were asking him, like, how do I become a Buddha? It was all individualistic too, right? It was a lot of me. How do I do this? How do I do that? I have all these problems and this and that. And Shunryu Suzuki said, you're asking the wrong questions. We meditate because that's what Buddhas do. We're not trying to get anything out of this. We meditate because that's what Buddhas do. Just like the guy at the gas station pumps gas because that's what he does. It's not rocket science. It only becomes rocket science when you have a self-centered perspective of spirituality. And that's the sad thing in the modern day, not just in the modern day. Chogyam Trungpa talked about this in Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism and those type of books, where especially New Age spiritual people, it's so self-centered. It's always about me. Where Eastern spirituality is to eliminate the me. Eliminate the me, then you naturally become a better person. And then you may understand then what enlightenment is, because you're not so self-absorbed with enlightenment. You've taken enlightenment off the table, thrown it in the bin. Then you may understand what that is, because you are not going to get it. The me, the you, the I can never be enlightened. It has to be removed to even understand what that is. Not to get it, but to even understand what it is, right? And so that's the problem with this achievement-based society, because spiritual people are so absorbed with themselves trying to get somewhere, and then they can become very competitive with other spiritual people. As you know, I get emails all the time, comments all the time, where people trying to compete with me, oh, you don't know, or this and that, and I just conveniently delete and ignore because it's just completely ridiculous, and it's like how I was when I was 5 years old, not as 44 years old. So it's just completely childish to get in those sorts of games, because again, they are the victim of achievement society, and in an achievement society, what happens? You're competitive, right? You're in competition with others. When you don't operate from the achievement-based society and you've allowed the Tao Te Ching to infect your soul, then you come from a very natural place, which is what my new book is about, right? The tradition of natural Taoism. As you come back to that natural place, you're not then defined by whatever society is doing. You're naturally moving with the world as a piece of it. You're an aperture for the universe to express itself. You're not an aperture for the achievement-based society to express itself, but that's unfortunately what the world has become. We are so indoctrinated, we become that aperture for the culture and the society to express itself through us.
Yes.
And it's like, I want to see who you truly are, though. I don't want to see another version of the society or culture. I can walk outside and see plenty of different, not different, I can see the same versions of that playing out through everyone. Yes. I want to see really who you are. I want to know what your li is, your true organic pattern. I don't want to see the personality of you. I want to see your actual organic true nature.
Yes, a lot of people make mistake with learning this deep knowledge, is that putting that knowledge into same framework of the modern days achievement-based society. Like, doesn't matter in the West or East, is pretty much very similar to nowadays. But they bring this knowledge into that type of framework. So let's say, for example, I'm gonna do American thing because I'm an American, for example. But having that framework, but instead of American thing getting replaced with, now I'm going to do spiritual thing. It's like this, really. So achievement-based society keeps the shell is the same, so as in the method of going about is the same. But so content, they're just trying to replace with one another, right? So that's why it doesn't work.
That's right.
Like you said, people become competitive. And I wish sometimes those people read their own messages as a third party, how it sounds pretty childish and ridiculous. You know what I mean? It'd be almost, you're going to be embarrassed almost. And also, those people often having this tendency of being aggressive too, because they're very self-centered. And they're very keen to achieve something in this spiritual path. So that if anything gets in their way, they become very aggressive because they're so obsessed by their own practice, whatever the practice is.
Air quotes.
Yeah. But what I would say is that I'm doing American thing, or I'm doing spiritual thing, I'm doing Korean thing, whatever. okay, you can go out and do whatever the thing that you want. But what really needs to change is the framework. Framework it needs to be changed, and framework is actually our conditioning and socialization process that we're going through, so that we learn to be certain way, or we learn to have certain way of thinking, right? That's basically operating system, and our operating system has to be entirely changed so that we can see this knowledge transparently and as it is. Unless we clear out that perception, we will never be able to meet this knowledge as it is.
That's right. It's like when people ask you and I, why do we do everything we do? And yeah, we love it. But outside of that, there's no particular reason at all. It's just that's the way nature is expressing itself through us. And so that's what we do. That's why we've dedicated our life to this. And I think that most people's dedication to this, as you're alluding to, is very weak and selfish, because they're trying to get something, right? If we look at the Sanskrit word sadhana, sadhana can be translated as a strict dedication to the contemplative life. And when I say contemplative life here, we're talking in the sense kind of Socrates, the vita contemplativa, and also it relates to Chuang-Tzu's Xiao Yao Yu, free and easy wandering, in oneness, if you will. And so it's a dedication to that. It's not like what you said at the start of the podcast. It's not like you've come to like a logical conclusion about what reality is. It's that you're just moving as one with it. You're not trying to get anything anymore. You've given up. It's like that old analogy with the businessman on his deathbed with the Rolex. He's got that Rolex on. He's still trying to sell that Rolex. It's like, man, you've got like literally 5 minutes to die. I think you need to be thinking about something a little bit more grander than if you can make a few bucks from this. But we sadly, that's how we live our lives. We are the businessman on the deathbed with the Rolex. And so we're trying to get something always from life. Have you ever contemplated that life doesn't owe you anything? It never owed you anything. Not one iota were you owed. You don't deserve nothing. Because when you are coming to that perspective, you then realize that you do truly belong. When you think that you deserve something, you're still trying to extract something from life. When you just give up and just throw it all out, not give up in the negative sense, but you give up the quest and the striving for enlightenment or whatever it is, then you naturally realize that you fundamentally do belong. You are one with the Tao. You're one with the river. But the irony is you can only come to that conclusion when you've completely let go. And you immerse yourself in the contemplative life. You immerse yourself in that sadhana, and then that becomes the essence of your life.
Yes, this path is completely opposite from the achievement-based world, isn't it?
That's
like
right,
you need to more let go, more you stay away from all this noise and self-centered thinking. Then actually it'll come to you. Sometimes suddenly come to you. Sometimes it slowly comes to you, and it just reveals itself. The knowledge is not something, I never thought that this deep knowledge is something that you need to cultivate or accumulate. I think we all innately have, but we've just been polluted by all this noise from outside and our education system and whatnot. So what we need to do is to let go finally, just let go of everything, and let that jewel within all of us, just let it shine on its own.
That's beautiful. And it speaks to the last 4 lines of the Tao Te Ching, actually, where it says, the Tao of heaven benefits and does not harm. The Tao of sages assists and does not contend. And so in saying that especially the last 2 lines, is that the sage is always there, but he's not in competition. He is of the most pure assistance someone can be of. And so they're always there, and they're giving, they're naturally compassionate, naturally forgiving, but they don't follow the PC conventions of the time, and because they are outside the scope of ideology.
Yes.
Because Taoism, essentially, as you all surely would know now from listening to us through all of these chapters, Taoism is an ideology of no ideology. And so, guys, this is the last episode, as we said, and we just want to thank everyone who has been there. Actually, since 2020, the first episode of the 81 Meditations of the Tao Te Ching came out. So it's been a long time. It's been over 4 years since we had the first episode, and we want to thank the hardcores in the audience who have been there since the first episode. If you are one of those hardcores, we want to know who you are. Leave a comment below. That would be highly appreciated, because Guy and I have had the privilege of speaking with you about the Tao Te Ching for a long time now, and I don't think that there has been a series on the Tao Te Ching that's been more comprehensive than ours. So we really enjoyed making this series, and we truly hope that you appreciated everything about it. Anything you'd like to say?
No, you've said it beautifully. We've been journey with the Lao Tzu for almost over 4 years now, and it actually became part of our life somewhat, isn't it? Like, it's been great learning journey for us as well, and also it's been great to be in communication with viewers.
That's right. But guys, it's not finished there. Next week we will have a review episode. We will review the 81 meditations of the Tao Te Ching, and Guy and I will speak about our favorite chapters and what they mean to us, our own personal reflection, and obviously we'll be showering you with a lot of gratitude as well. So guys, we hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you guys in the next one.